Welcome to the Red Dice Diaries. This podcast is a rambling journey through the wonderful world of RPGs from the viewpoint of a long-time GM and player. The music at the start of this podcast was Nightmare by Alexander Nakarada and is used under Creative Commons license. So, up until recently, I've got to admit that I'm pretty much given up on the idea of using more traditional dice in RPGs. And this wasn't because I didn't like dice for any reason. Obviously, I'm an RPGer. I've slung plenty of dice in my time. However, it came about because largely, as I started getting into making YouTube videos and getting in touch with the RPG Brigade community, and I was encouraged to do that by some very kind people there, I started running more games online. Now, this was a real boon for me since I live in a fairly small town and the pool of available players to run face-to-face games with is limited, to say the least. And since, for medical reasons, I don't drive, it's very difficult for me to travel further afield on a spur of notice to attend other games. So online games were a real sort of benefit to me, since it means that I can game with people all over the world. I've gamed with people in Europe, New Zealand, America, Australia, etc. People who I wouldn't even have the chance to meet, let alone game with. So online gaming, despite the many technical issues and hitches and the problems that it brings, has been a real lifesaver to me in terms of my sort of RPGing recreational life. And it's also meant that I've been able to get in touch with people, do my YouTube channel, do this podcast and other things like that. However, it did mean that as I started doing more and more online gaming, I started using physical dice less and less. And this is because, well, if I'm online and I've got like a dice rolling app online, it's just using manual dice is just one more thing to take up my already limited space on my tabletop. So I just started going more towards the online dice, and my dice sat alone and unloved in a large box next to my computer. However, as I've started attending more conventions, particularly getting involved with the Games on Demand run by Lloyd Jan at the UK Games Expo, it became necessary for me to start using physical dice again, since obviously I'm carrying them to the convention and I like to have a few sets just in case players rock up to Games on Demand, which is sort of the point of it, and they don't have their own dice, in the same way you provide pencils, character sheets, etc. Now, as I started to use them more, it reminded me what I really loved about physical dice in the first place, and that is there's something more tangible and more physical about holding a set of dice, rolling them, and then leaning in eagerly to look at those numbers and see what the eventual fate of your character has been. And it's something that really sort of amps up the sense of suspense and also the feeling of being involved in the game. It's a feeling that you don't really get when you're just clicking on a button and waiting for a random number to pop up. So I think, although I'm not going to go mad like some people do and splurge out on like hundreds and hundreds of different dice sets, I still do think that there is a very real place for physical dice in RPGs and other games that use them, despite the advancements and the electronic formats that are available. And this isn't to say that there's anything wrong with using electronic dice or apps or things like that. If you have a limited carrying capability, if you have a small amount of space to play in, they can be an absolute godsend. But let's face it, there is nothing to beat that feeling of picking up a handful of dice at a crucial moment of the game, giving them a dramatic shake and rolling them to see whether your sword strikes home or whether your character will meet an ignominious fate at the hands of his foes. So that's it for this episode. If you have any questions or suggestions for things you'd like to see in the podcast in future, please either email them to reddicediaries@gmail.com or drop me a voicemail at Anchor. Until I see you next time, wherever you're playing, take care and enjoy yourselves.